I will shred this universe down to its last atom, and then create a new one, a grateful universe. As you already know, the hardest choices require the strongest wills. But when it comes to one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel Universe, your choice couldn't be easier. Did I just hear that a Thanos solo movie will hit theaters soon? Stay with me until the end and find out. Now, let's dive in with a short recap. Marvel's most recognizable villain is the Mad Titan, Thanos. And yes, that might be because he appeared in the most successful MCU movies, but his enduring presence in the comics has an effect as well. However, not all the fans are aware of the change this character went through over the years. Thanos is the brainchild of the legendary creator Jim Starlin, the guy whose work was crucial in building what is known today as Marvel's cosmic setting. He created this character back in 1972, and this was his first actual job for Marvel as a young artist, working as a guest illustrator for Iron Man issue 55. But this early character was deeply influenced by Starlin's own beliefs and ideas, so he was clearly inspired by the DC character Metron and Darkseid, basing him on mankind's fascination for death. The Freudian concept of Thanatos, the artist conceived the character during a psychology class. And if you remember, this is all presented in the stories by Thanos' unanswered love for Lady Death. At this stage, Thanos is a dangerous space marauder, but also he has a nihilistic deeper side that drives him towards. Starlin had Thanos appear in Warlock and Captain Marvel after Iron Man, but his first moments as a villain came back in 1972, when spanned 5 different Marvel comic books. Thanos showed the way that his nihilistic obsession could go in this saga, as he tried to destroy the sun using the Soul Gems, also known as the Infinity Stones. As a result of Starlin's turbulent relationship with Marvel, Thanos was forgotten for more than a decade, but he made his triumphant comeback in 1990 as the undisputed protagonist and villain of the Infinity Gauntlet saga. Thanos has completely cast aside his mundane interest in this set of stories. He is now entirely focused on obtaining absolute power through the Infinity Gems, ascending to a higher level of existence, and he is no longer the leader of a fleet of space criminals. His character has changed, and his infamous snap is proof of that. He now operates on a universal, almost metaphysical level. The Infinity Gauntlet saga, however, marks the end of his villain's path, after he could allow himself to lose that power, meaning after becoming the Supreme Being, Thanos hit that like button just like you should if you haven't done so already. No, really. After he became a supreme creature, Thanos realizes the vacuity of such pursuits, chasing knowledge rather than power. He becomes a scholar, and in this guise, he saves the universe more than once. Anyway, as a character, he slipped out of Starlin's creative control, and his redemption would not last. Marvel decided that Thanos was just too good of a villain. I'm not sure how they got this on their mind. After this, Thanos' own clone saga, and after another decade of unremarkable storylines, once again, during Annihilation, the character rose to prominence, which made Marvel give him an extended and revamped version of his origin story in 2013's Thanos' Rising. Thanos re-established himself as Marvel's main villain that same year. But this guy, this modern Thanos, is much different from the previous version. Thanos became essentially a serial killer, and his obsession with death went from nihilistic to morbid. Don't get me wrong, he is still a genius, but he is more often a destructive force of nature. Anyway, the question that we have right now is, will Thanos return? I'm convinced he will. As early as Kenneth Branagh's Thor in 2011, the character was teased, until it was properly introduced in Avengers Infinity War in 2018, played by Josh Brolin. He was ultimately defeated by the Avengers soon after that, but caused some serious damage in Avengers Endgame. Thanos made a lasting impact in the franchise, despite his rather short stint in the MCU. He is a synonym for the strongest villain ever. The events of Eternals would make you think that his snap was actually good for the galaxy, even though he became more popular with arguments that he was right to continue in projects like Hawkeye. And you know what? One way or another, there's still interest in seeing him back in the MCU, despite his complicated legacy. This is also Starlin's opinion as well, which is very important. And he is making some really good points as to why Marvel Studios should bring back this character in the universe. In his most recent interview with iVerse, Thanos' creator said, "Well, I think he probably hits a nerve. He raises questions that a number of us have thought about. He's also just a badass character. I don't think anybody thinks we've seen the last of him. Disney made a bunch of money off of him, and there's probably a bunch of money to still be made. So my fingers are crossed. And do you agree with him? I certainly can. Before settling on what ended in Avengers Infinity War, Marvel Studios changed his appearance several times. Between the continued clamor to learn more about the Titan and the previous mentioned things, bringing back the character has a lot of benefits. And don't worry, his return won't change anything. I mean, that shouldn't change anything, because his return could be part of a prequel story for Eros. Remember his brother who was recently introduced via Eternals? Or who knows? Marvel Studios might give us a story that could focus more on this personal history. We expect a solo project that could tackle his childhood, so everything is in the studio right now. If they decide to bring Thanos back, there are definitely a few ways they could do that. Either to utilize the burgeoning multiverse to do it, or go through the prequel route. And while we're still on this, it's important to mention that Brolin is confirmed to return as Cable. So how hard could it be to convince him to return as our favorite villain? He is a villain, and yet there are so many stories related to his name. Why is Thanos such an interesting character to get his own solo movie? Well, it's not just him, but his family, his origin story, and his adopted children. The fans are of the opinion that Thanos should have gotten his movie even before Avengers Infinity War. I know that we're all here to speak about the return of the last Titan, but let's be honest, a prequel story is more possible at the moment. Imagine the story where we'll see what happened when Thanos was born and labeled a defect, like in the last few years of Marvel Comics. Skinny, young Thanos, growing up an outsider, but one who was the most ruthless, curious, and the most brilliant. Imagine a story where we'll see everything, what he does to satisfy his curiosity, beating his infamous brother Star Fox and father Lars, killing his own mother to genetically enhance himself, and who knows what else. Can you imagine Thanos conquering world after world, starting his intergalactic fleet, and smashing that subscribe button and hitting that notification bell? No, really, in all seriousness now. Maybe in the same story, we'll find out who the Black Order really are. If this movie happens, it definitely will be set up for the Soul Stone and answer how it ended up where it is. And one more thing. What if the final act of such a movie shows Thanos doing what Ronan the Accuser failed to do, making up for one of his dumber mistakes and acquiring the Purple Power Stone, while in the meantime, destroying the Nova Corps? And if you are the one following the MCU events, this could be a setup for a Nova origin movie. In fact, Kevin Feige already said that this movie is likely happening sooner rather than later in the MCU. And what about you? What are your theories? Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.